This is The Minimum Commitment, film theory in small doses. Human beings have always trusted voices. Long before books, film, and podcast, we gathered in the dark, captivated by stories that made the world feel understandable. A timeless human tradition to explain our fears, confusions, and the mysteries beyond our grasp. If stories have always helped us make sense of the world, how do we distinguish between a story that simply comforts and a story that tells the truth? That's the question that lingers beneath every moment of Monolith, directed by Matt Vesely. Because podcasts haven't changed the ancient relationship between storyteller and listener. They have simply removed the requirement that the storyteller be sitting in the same room. I'm Don Lawler, film scholar, audio obsessive, and someone who believes that some of our oldest fears survive because we keep finding new ways to tell old stories. Let's get into it. For all of its science fiction trappings, Monolith begins with something profoundly human. A mistake. Not an apocalyptic mistake or a technological catastrophe, but a professional failure serious enough to destabilize a person's career, reputation, and understanding of themselves. That's an important place to begin because redemption changes the way we search for truth. When you've lost something important, everything starts to look like a way back. Once certainty has been lost, the search for answers takes on a different character. Possibilities that might once have seemed implausible begin to feel persuasive. Mysteries that should remain distant acquire an intensely personal significance. And that's exactly where our unnamed journalist finds herself. Played with remarkable precision by Lily Sullivan, she launches a podcast investigating reports of mysterious black bricks appearing around the world. The deeper she digs, the less stable the idea of truth becomes. Every new source adds another explanation, another perspective, another reason to doubt the credibility of the one before it. I spent most of the film asking the same question as the journalist. What are these things? But somewhere in the accumulation of voices, theories, and half-truths, I realized I had been asking the wrong question. The bricks mattered less than the people trying to explain them. And that, I think, is where Monolith begins to reveal what it's really about. The lens I want to use today is truth, though not in the sense of simply determining what is factual and what is false. Monolith is interested in something more complicated. The way human beings construct meaning through stories, and the unsettling realization that those stories can be shared, altered, and sometimes destroyed. Monolith understands something deeply uncomfortable about modern life. We don't suffer from a lack of information. We suffer from an excess of it. As the journalist begins interviewing witnesses, believers, skeptics, victims, and experts, a pattern starts to present itself. Every explanation sounds plausible. The bricks are alien. The bricks are art. They are technology. They are psychological, valuable, and meaningless. And with each new voice, certainty continues to fade further away. The problem is not ignorance. The problem is abundance. Too many stories, too many explanations, too many people willing to tell us what happened. If enough convincing stories exist, how do we know which one belongs to reality? The camera in Monolith stays remarkably close to the protagonist, and after a while I started to understand why. Human beings have always looked to faces for truth. We study the eyes for honesty, the mouth for hesitation, the body for signs of fear and conviction. Long before we trusted large institutions, we trusted one another. The film exploits that instinct brilliantly, forcing us into a relationship with the storyteller that feels less like cinema and more like a confession. That intimacy forces us to listen, because the closer a voice feels, the harder it becomes to treat it as background noise. It starts to matter. It starts to persuade. And that is exactly what podcasts ask us to do. They invite us to trust another person's experience, another person's interpretation, and eventually, another person's understanding of the world. The technology may be modern, but the act itself is ancient. Single-performance films rarely remain stories about isolation. Eventually, they become stories about confrontation. Ivan Locke confronts the father he refuses to become. The sailor in All Is Lost confronts mortality. And in Monolith, the journalist confronts something equally transformative: truth. That distinction matters because truth, at least in this film, is not presented as a piece of information waiting to be discovered. It feels more like an experience. Something encountered. Something survived. And like any profound experience, it changes the person who goes through it. By the end of Monolith, the question is no longer whether the mystery has been solved. The more unsettling question is whether the person who began the investigation could ever have survived that knowledge unchanged. That thought led me back to the black bricks themselves and what they might represent. Maybe the bricks are the unknown itself. In modern life, carrying instability can be exhausting. Once we start speaking about that instability, sharing it, passing it to one another, it grows. At one point, the film asks a remarkable question. Does talking about the bricks become an act of infection? That's a terrifying idea. Because words don't merely describe reality. They participate in creating it. A story passes from one person to another, gathering meaning as it moves, changing the people who tell it and the people who hear it. The film understands that stories behave less like information and more like viruses. They spread through communities, adapt to new environments, and often survive long after the people who first told them have disappeared.
This is why it is dangerous to keep doing the podcast. Don't you understand? Nobody listens to me. I go to the police, to the doctors, to the government, but they all tell me I'm crazy. Do you think I am crazy?
No, I don't. I think you're frightened.
That may be the most honest thing anyone says in the entire film. Fear changes the way we search for truth. When uncertainty becomes unbearable, the desire for understanding can slowly transform into the desire for reassurance. And those two pursuits, though they often look identical, can lead us to very different places. That's the great tragedy of our current moment. Not that people believe false things, but that they are frightened enough to need them. Which brings us to the ending. The doppelganger, the confrontation, and the transformation. By the time Monolith reaches its conclusion, the question of survival starts to feel strangely inadequate. The more compelling question is whether the person who started the investigation was ever capable of surviving the truth she sought. Some discoveries do not just answer questions. They change the person who asked them. The reason Monolith resonates so deeply is that it recognizes something about human nature that does not go away. We have always gathered in the dark to hear stories. We have always searched for someone to explain the world to us. We step into that darkness with curiosity, with fear, and with a desire to know. And once we begin speaking into it, we are no longer just receiving a story. We are shaping one. The technology changes. The tradition remains. That is the unsettling possibility Monolith leaves behind. That the search for truth may lead us back to ourselves. That's your thought for the day. Minimum commitment, maximum meaning. See you next time. The Minimum Commitment is produced, recorded, and edited by Don Lawler. Music by Don Lawler.